spring should have brought peace to the harbor district of Seattle. Instead, it delivered a warning. When three men came back to Jake Harris's garage, armed with rage, liquor, and a grudge, they thought they were hunting an ordinary mechanic. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know about the wounded Navy SEAL who refused to break, or the German Shepherd trained to stand between innocence and danger. And they didn't know that the woman they once mocked would return with the strength they never saw coming. What happened next was not luck. It was consequence. It was justice catching up. Before we begin, share this story with someone who believes courage can change a life. Tell us where you're watching from, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and transformation. Spring in Seattle, and the man who left the battlefield, a thin spring mist drifted through Seattle's harbor district, weaving between blooming trees and damp metal rooftops. Jake Harris pushed open the sliding door of his small auto garage, letting the cool air spill inside. At about 40 years old, Jake carried the frame of a man shaped by storms, not seasons. His shoulders were broad, his back straight, and his movements deliberate, marked by an old injury in his left knee that made each step slightly uneven. His face was all angles and quiet storms, a sharp jaw, a square chin, a straight nose, and a neatly trimmed beard peppered with early gray. His skin, pale from years overseas beneath harsh light, held a few faint scars near the temples, reminders of missions he never spoke about. His eyes were the most striking thing about him. Normally warm brown, they could shift in a breath to something razor sharp, like a soldier assessing a threat. Those eyes had once scanned night deserts and hostile coastlines. Now they scanned worn brake pads and tired engines. Most customers saw him as a calm, polite mechanic. They never noticed the way he positioned himself near exits, or how he angled his body to shield his daughter when someone suspicious entered the shop. Beside him padded Ranger, his 5-year-old German Shepherd. Ranger's coat was a dark saddle of black and brown, thick and weatherproof. His ears stood tall, always listening, always ready. His gaze held the kind of intelligence that made strangers pause, unsure if they were being evaluated, and usually they were. The black harness strapped to Ranger's chest read, "Service dog, do not pet," but the true warning was unspoken. Ranger had worked with Jake on missions where silence meant survival. That training never left him. He moved like a shadow with teeth. Jake crouched to check Ranger's harness straps, tightening them with the gentleness of a father, helping a child with a jacket. "Long day ahead, buddy," he murmured. Ranger huffed, pressing his head into Jake's hand. Inside the garage, 7-year-old Mia Harris sat at a small wooden table Jake had sanded and repaired himself. She had inherited her late mother's soft, honey-brown hair and Jake's expressive eyes. Her legs swung above the floor as she colored a picture of a red pickup truck, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in deep concentration. Mia was a small, bright fire in a world that had dimmed for Jake after his wife's illness. She was curious, talkative, and endlessly patient with Ranger's protective nudges. Jake's heart softened every time he looked at her. She was the reason he woke at dawn, the reason he kept moving, the reason he learned to live again instead of merely survive. "Daddy," Mia said, lifting her drawing, "does the truck need something to make it go faster?" Jake wiped grease from his hands. "Maybe a new engine belt, or a mechanic who cares about it." She nodded solemnly, as if receiving sacred knowledge. Ranger leaned close to sniff the paper, earning a fit of giggles from Mia. The garage opened at 8. By 9, the day's rhythm had already begun. A delivery driver with fading tattoos stopped in for a brake adjustment. A college student with a sputtering moped asked if she could pay next month. A single mother brought in her rattling sedan, embarrassed to admit she had only half of the repair cost. Jake never hesitated. "Pay what you can," he said. Or, "I'll cover the parts. You take care of your kids." People in the neighborhood whispered about his kindness. What they didn't know was that generosity steadied him. Helping others filled a space inside him that war had hollowed out. But not everyone who passed through the district had good intentions. Across the street, a group of young men loitered against a brick wall, their laughter sharp, their movements restless. They were the sort who fed on weakness, who prodded the vulnerable just to see what would happen. They watched the garage with idle interest, unaware of the quiet storm behind its doors. One of them pointed at Ranger. "That dog looks mean," he sneered. Another chuckled. "Bet he's just for show." Inside, Ranger lifted his head. His ears snapped forward, and a low vibration hummed in his throat. Jake felt the shift instantly, the air tightening. He turned his head slightly, not enough for Mia to notice, but enough for Ranger to catch his signal. Watch, but wait. Ranger lowered his muzzle and stared at the doorway, muscles taut beneath his coat. Jake's jaw tightened. Even now, after years away from combat, danger moved through him like a language he never forgot. He could read aggression in a footstep, a breath, a glance as easily as other men read newspaper headlines. If those boys ever crossed the line, they would learn a truth the military had etched into Jake's bones. A Navy SEAL doesn't look for trouble, but he is never unprepared for it. And Ranger, silent, loyal, deadly when needed, was the kind of guardian most thugs only met in nightmares. As the spring light brightened through the mist, Jake returned to work, but a shadow of alertness stayed with him. Trouble had brushed the edge of their world, and he knew trouble seldom passed by without trying the door. Today it only watched. Tomorrow it might knock. The runaway CEO and the dead bike. A faint spring drizzle softened the late afternoon light as Olivia Parker guided her motorcycle through the narrow streets of Seattle's Harbor District. She had been riding for hours, her fingers stiff inside leather gloves, her thoughts spinning faster than the engine beneath her. At 32, Olivia carried the polished aura of a woman sculpted by ambition. She was tall, slender, with long dark hair that curled slightly at the ends when damp. Her skin held the warm bronze tone of her New Mexico childhood, though stress had muted some of its brightness. Her eyes, deep hazel framed by thick lashes, revealed a weariness that expensive skincare, designer clothes, or corner office power could not conceal. For years she had lived in a world of glass and steel, boardrooms, contracts, investors who smiled too wide and listened too little. Breaking off her engagement had been the final fracture. Her former fiancé, Richard Hale, a sharply dressed man with a jaw sculpted by money rather than hardship, had viewed their relationship as a strategic merger. When he spoke about their future, he referenced tax advantages more often than affection. Ending it freed her heart, but left her drifting. So, she ran. North on her matte black touring motorcycle, a machine she bought for her 30th birthday but rarely rode. The engine felt like honesty. The wind felt like truth. Until the engine sputtered. On the edge of a quiet street, lined with old brick shops and small cafes soaked in mist, the bike coughed once, twice, then died completely. Olivia coasted to the curb, boots splashing in a shallow puddle. The drizzle deepened, dampening her jacket and soaking her hair until loose strands clung to her cheeks. She tried the ignition. Nothing. Her phone, which she had deliberately powered off to escape the world, was still packed away. She stood on the sidewalk, shivering, refusing to ask for help. Pride ran through her like a reflex. In San Francisco, needing anything often meant giving someone leverage. But here, in this quiet corner of Seattle, standing alone in the rain, she felt something unfamiliar. Fear mixed with fragile hope. A scraping sound came from across the street. The large garage door slid open, and Jake Harris stepped into view with a grease-stained rag draped over one hand. His tall frame blocked part of the doorway. At first glance, he looked like any hard-working mechanic. Broad shoulders, worn boots, and a t-shirt that had known better days. But there was an unmistakable steadiness about him, a silent authority she couldn't place yet. Ranger, the German shepherd, followed at his heel. The dog moved with a professional calm, his posture alert but not aggressive, his gaze sweeping the street before settling on her with uncanny intelligence. Olivia stiffened instinctively, not from fear, but from recognition. This was no ordinary pet. This was a working dog trained to read danger, before humans even sensed it. Jake crossed the street, rain darkening his hair. His face held no judgment, no impatience, only quiet focus. "Engine trouble?" he asked. His voice was low, even, steady, not rehearsed like executives she sparred with daily. This tone belonged to someone who had learned to stay calm when the world around him broke apart. "It just died," Olivia said, embarrassed by the tremor in her voice. "I'm not sure what happened." "Let's get it out of the rain." He looked past her at the motorcycle, assessing its weight and position. "Ranger, stay." Ranger sat instantly, muscles still, eyes fixed on the street. The discipline, swift and unquestioning, made Olivia's breath catch. She didn't know yet that these two had once moved through night raids, desert storms, and the kind of silence that only war teaches. She only sensed something dangerous and deeply protective beneath their calm exterior. Jake gripped the motorcycle handles, testing the balance, and gestured for her to help guide it. Together they pushed it across the street. With each step, Olivia observed him in fragmented impressions. His quiet strength, the slight limp in his left leg, the way Ranger trotted beside them with precise steps as if guarding both her and the machine. Inside the garage, the warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. A small wooden table in the corner held coloring pencils and drawings, clearly the space where a child often sat. A girl appeared moments later. 7-year-old Mia, with soft brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail, peeked around a shelf stocked with wrenches and oil cans. She was small, cheerful-looking, and wore an oversized hoodie speckled with paint. "Hi," Mia said shyly, her big eyes studying Olivia. "Is that your bike? It's really cool." Olivia managed a smile. "Thank you. It's a bit stubborn today." Jake crouched beside the motorcycle and began checking the wiring with slow, methodical movements. He didn't rush, didn't curse under his breath, didn't act inconvenienced. Olivia found herself watching the way his brow furrowed, how his scarred hands moved with care. "Fuel line issue," he muttered after several minutes. "Not serious. I can fix it, but it'll take a little time." "That's fine," she said, folding her arms to hide her nervousness. I work in tech. Well, kind of. So I understand machines, but not this kind." Jake glanced up at her, a small but unreadable smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Ranger approached, sniffing the air lightly as if cataloging her presence. Then, in a gesture of acceptance, he sat by her feet. "He likes you," Mia whispered. Olivia blinked. Something warm settled in her chest. Acceptance was not something she usually earned so easily. Outside the garage, the young men who had lingered earlier drifted past again, their voices loud and mocking. Ranger's ears snapped forward. Jake's posture shifted. Subtle but unmistakable, his shoulders squared, his gaze hardened. Olivia felt the air tense as if some invisible line had been crossed. She didn't know what happened here earlier that day, but she sensed one truth with absolute clarity. If danger stepped through that door, Jake and Ranger would not hesitate. And any thug foolish enough to test them would regret it instantly. The thought made her feel strangely safe, safer than she had felt in years. Brief days of calm and the first shadows of trouble. The next morning arrived with pale spring sunlight slipping between drifting gray clouds, casting a muted glow over the harbor district. The air smelled faintly of wet pavement and roasted coffee from the shop down the street. Inside the garage, Jake tightened the last bolt on Olivia's motorcycle, wiping his hands on a clean cloth before stepping back to assess his work. "It's ready," he said. Olivia watched him with genuine surprise. She stood beside the workbench, her dark hair gathered loosely at the nape of her neck, still carrying a hint of ocean wind from the ride the day before. Her leather jacket dripped slightly onto the concrete floor, yet she seemed unbothered by the chill. What caught her attention, more than the repaired engine, was Jake's honesty. In her world, prices were inflated, favors were bartered, and motives were often disguised. Here, things were different. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. 70, Jake answered, his tone neutral. "That's too little," she insisted, reaching for her wallet. "Please, let me pay more." Jake paused mid-step and turned. The question he asked held no anger, only clarity. "Why should you pay more than what it's worth?" The simplicity of it disarmed her. She lowered her gaze, searching for a response, but finding none. Truth had a way of revealing itself in Jake's presence. Quiet, undeniable, and unembellished. She left the garage that afternoon, but returned the next morning under the thin excuse of checking a sound she wasn't sure about. Jake saw through it, though he said nothing. Mia sprinted to greet her, smallest sneakers squeaking on the concrete. The 7-year-old wore a bright yellow sweater covered in doodles from art class, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "You came back," Mia beamed. "Do you want to see my new drawing?" Olivia knelt beside her, smiling warmly. "Of course, show me everything." Ranger trotted over, tail giving a single, measured sweep of approval. The big shepherd examined her with professional seriousness, then allowed her to clip the leash to his harness. Jake raised a brow at that. Ranger did not offer such trust easily. Over the next 2 days, a gentle rhythm formed. Olivia spent long afternoons learning how to check tire pressure, change oil, and clean spark plugs. Her hands, once accustomed to signing contracts and flicking across touchscreens, grew smudged with grease. Yet, she laughed more freely than she had in years. Jake noticed, and he noticed the way her shoulders relaxed around Mia, how Ranger stood closer to her now, how the faint sadness in Olivia's eyes seemed to ease whenever the garage door opened, and the smell of engine oil filled the air. But Jake also noticed something else. The same group of young men who had lingered outside earlier, they watched, always watching. He didn't mention it to Olivia, not yet. One bishin. Mild spring afternoon, the three of them decided to walk to a small cafe around the corner. The place was run by a petite woman named Marcy Tran, a Vietnamese-American baker in her late 40s, with kind brown eyes and flour always dusted on her sleeves. Marcy had short, wavy black hair and a habit of humming old jazz tunes as she worked. She welcomed customers with motherly warmth, especially Mia. Marcy waved from behind the counter as the trio approached. "Jake! Mia! And, oh, you must be Olivia." Her smile widened. "They've mentioned you." Olivia felt a strange flutter in her chest, not discomfort, but belonging. The three stepped out with warm pastries in hand, the breeze carrying hints of cinnamon and spring blossoms. But halfway down the block, the mood shifted. Three men stumbled from behind a parked truck, young, intoxicated, and loud. The ringleader was a lanky man with a narrow jaw and greasy blonde hair tucked beneath a backward cap. His name, according to the fading tattoo across his collarbone, was Travis. His eyes were pale, restless, and hungry for trouble. His friends, a stocky, red-faced man named Colt, and a wiry figure with pockmarked cheeks called Vince, followed with swaggering steps. "Well, look at this," Travis drawled, eyeing Olivia openly. "Fancy jacket. Fancy bike the other day. Where you from, sweetheart?" Mia instinctively stepped back. Ranger sensed the tension instantly. His ears shot forward, his posture sinking low, muscles coiled, breath steady. His growl began deep in his chest, a warning older than language. Jake moved without thinking. The calm mechanic vanished. In his place stood a Navy SEAL, silent, precise, dangerous. He shifted Olivia behind him with a single fluid motion. His voice cut the air. "Walk away." Colt snorted. "Relax, old man." Vince stepped toward Mia. Ranger exploded into motion, not attacking, but intercepting. The shepherd's body blocked the path, shoulders rigid, eyes locked, a fierce snarl ripping free. Every instinct in the air changed. The thugs froze, startled at the sudden transformation from gentle shop dog to trained protector. Travis lifted his hands, pretending innocence. "Didn't mean anything, just talking." Jake stepped closer, his stance steady, his expression deadly calm. "You're done talking." It wasn't a threat, it was a fact. The men hesitated, but only for a moment. Then, muttering curses, they backed away, disappearing into the alley as a police cruiser turned onto the street. Olivia exhaled shakily. Mia clung to her hip. Ranger returned to Jake's side, body still tense, ready to react if even one man came back. "That was," Olivia whispered, voice trembling. "Jake, what was that?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the street, ensuring the threat was gone before he let his shoulders drop. "Just something I used to be," he said, "and something I'll be again if anyone threatens my kid." Ranger nudged his leg, as if agreeing. Olivia looked between the two, the soldier and the dog forged in places darker than this quiet street, and felt a surge of safety she had never known before. But she also sensed another truth. Trouble had seen them, and trouble rarely walked away for good. The revealed secret, and the night the thugs returned. Spring rain swept across the harbor district in soft, steady waves, tapping gently on the garage's tin roof. Inside, a warm lamp glowed over the workbench where Jake sorted tools, while Mia sat cross-legged on the floor beside Ranger, braiding scraps of colored string. The shepherd lay patiently, his tail thumping every now and then when Mia giggled. Olivia had become a familiar presence here. Over the last several days, she arrived early, stayed late, and blended seamlessly into the small rhythms of the garage. She swept floors, fetched tools, learned to tighten bolts, and laughed more freely than she had in years. In those quiet moments, she looked nothing like the polished CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm. Instead, she appeared simply as a woman rediscovering the feel of her own lungs. But beneath the surface, worry tugged at her. Every time her phone remained dark in her pocket, she felt a flicker of guilt. Every time she heard the world outside moving on without her, she wondered how long she could hide here, in a place where she felt more human than she had in a decade. That answer arrived earlier than she expected. It happened on a late afternoon painted in soft gold and pale mist. Olivia was helping Mia glue colored beads onto a paper crown when her phone suddenly lit up with a sharp, vibrating buzz. Her heart lurched. The screen glowed with missed calls, 10, then 11, and messages stacked in frantic lines. Jake, tightening a bolt nearby, heard phrases escape from the unlocked line on her phone. Board meeting, stock down, media asking questions, CEO unreachable. He froze. Olivia's breath hitched. She fumbled to silence the device, but Jake had already turned toward her. His expression hardened, eyes narrowing with something colder than anger, hurt. "Olivia," he said, voice low, "what exactly is going on?" Mia looked up from the floor, sensing the tension. Ranger lifted his head, ears angling forward. Olivia's throat tightened. There was no hiding now. "I'm Olivia Parker," she said. Her voice trembled with the weight of the truth. "CEO of Valion Technologies." Silence fell heavy and immediate. Jake stared at her, the muscles in his jaw clenching. His expression didn't shift dramatically. Jake never moved like that, but the light in his eyes changed. The warmth dimmed, replaced by guarded steel. "You let me tell you everything about my life," he said quietly. "My service, my injury, my wife, and you hid the biggest part of yours. I didn't want you to treat me differently," she whispered. "I wanted to be ordinary, just for a little while." "Ordinary?" Jake stepped back as if the word itself stung. "You think we're part of some escape routine, a temporary chapter in a billionaire's self-discovery?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "No, Jake, He raised a hand sharply. "Stop!" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut like broken glass. Behind him, Ranger rose, sensing his distress. The shepherd moved closer to Mia, nudging her softly toward the back room, as if to protect her from the storm unfolding. "I have a daughter," Jake continued, quieter but more dangerous, "and I don't let people into her life unless I know exactly who they are." Olivia took a step forward, then stopped when Ranger's posture shifted protectively. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, voice cracking. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose this place, or you." "But you already have," Jake said. The words landed like a blow. Olivia left the garage that evening under a sky bleeding into dusk, the rain returning in soft, lonely streaks. She didn't look back. 2 nights passed. Seattle's calm spring evenings hid an undercurrent Jake recognized all too well. Trouble seldom accepted defeat. It simply regrouped, and trouble returned with reinforcements. It began with the hollow clatter of a trash bin kicked over outside. Then came the voices, slurred, taunting, thick with alcohol and bravado. Travis, Colt, Vince, and 3 more men Jake didn't recognize. Inside the garage, Mia practiced reading aloud while Ranger lay beside her, half asleep. Jake felt the change before the first stone hit the window. Ranger's head shot up, his body stiffened, fur bristling from shoulders to tail. The second stone shattered the outer pane. Jake grabbed Mia and rushed her to the small storage room at the back, locking the door. "Hold Ranger," he said, voice firm but calm. "Do not open this door until I come back." Ranger whined, torn between his guardian instinct and Jake's command. Mia wrapped her arms around his neck, eyes wide with fear. Outside, the garage door rattled violently. Angry fists slammed against the metal. The men cursed, shouting threats, their voices echoing off the narrow street. Jake stepped into the center of the garage, muscles coiling with the precision of a soldier preparing for controlled violence. This was no battlefield, but the rules of engagement were the same. When the door finally buckled inward and Travis stumbled through with a crowbar, Ranger erupted from the back room the moment Jake released the latch. The shepherd hit the ground in a low sprint, body aligned like an arrow, eyes burning with focus. Ranger slammed into the lead attacker, knocking him sideways. His snarl tore through the chaos, a primal warning backed by years of elite training. Jake moved with equal efficiency. He pivoted, seized Colt's wrist, twisted the crowbar free, and swept the man to the ground. Vince lunged from behind, but Jake's instincts flared. A sharp elbow to the ribs sent Vince gasping. Another step, another precise movement, and the man lay pinned under Jake's knee. 5 minutes. That was all it took. By the time the police sirens echoed down the block, the men lay disarmed on the floor, groaning, held in place by Jake's controlled holds and Ranger's sharp, commanding presence. But in the scuffle, a fallen toolbox had spilled across the floor. Mia, frightened by the crash, had slipped on a metal wrench and landed hard on her arm. Her cry cut through everything. Jake scooped her up, heart hammering in terror, and sprinted into the night toward urgent care. He never noticed the camera crew across the street capturing the aftermath, but in San Francisco, in an office of glass and tension, Olivia Parker did. Her face drained of color. Jake, Mia, Ranger, and danger closing in. The woman who returned, the real threat, and the making of a family. The morning Olivia saw the news footage, the world beneath her seemed to tilt. Her office, usually a sanctuary of glass, steel, and authority, felt suddenly too cold, too sharp, too far away from the only place she wanted to be. Jake's garage appeared on the screen in blurred chaos. Police tape fluttering in the wind, broken glass glinting under streetlights, paramedics rushing, and a brief glimpse of Jake Harris carrying his daughter in his arms. Face pale, jaw clenched, eyes burning with fear. It was the sight of Ranger racing beside him, barking sharply at a lingering camera crew, that broke whatever walls Olivia had left. This wasn't an escape anymore. It wasn't a break from responsibility. It was family, hers, if she was brave enough to claim it. She canceled every meeting with a single, trembling command. Her assistant, a soft-spoken woman named Elena Serrano, looked startled. Elena was in her mid-30s, petite, with wavy chestnut hair and gentle hazel eyes behind round glasses. Known for her quiet loyalty and thoughtful manner, she had seen Olivia through countless crises, but never one that made the CEO's voice shake. "Book me a flight to Seattle," Olivia said. "Tonight?" Elena asked. "Now." The flight felt endless. Olivia sat rigid in her seat, twisting the silver ring on her thumb, an old habit from childhood, whenever fear crawled beneath her skin. Outside the plane window, clouds folded and unfolded like soft gray curtains, but nothing calmed the tightness in her chest. When she finally reached the hospital, she nearly ran through the doors. Jake was sitting alone beside Mia's bed. He looked utterly unlike the steady man she had met in the garage. His usually composed features were shadowed with exhaustion. His beard was untrimmed, his eyes red, his hair pushed back roughly as if he had dragged his hands through it again and again. The broad shoulders of the former Navy SEAL, once symbols of strength, now seemed weighed down by helplessness. Mia lay asleep, her small arm bandaged, her breathing light and shallow. Ranger stood near the foot of the bed, refusing to rest. The shepherd's coat bristled with protective tension. Every sound outside the room made his ears angle sharply. His loyalty, unyielding, fierce, pulled at Olivia's heart. Jake looked up when she entered. He didn't speak, not at first, just watched her with guarded confusion. "I came as soon as I saw," she whispered. He nodded, but the pain in his eyes lingered. Words hung between them, heavy, unsaid. Olivia removed her coat, walked to Mia's bedside, and gently brushed a strand of hair from the girl's forehead. Then she sat down and began reading from the fairy tale book on the nightstand, her voice trembling at first, then smoothing into something calm and warm. Jake wasn't moved by her wealth, or the expensive coat, or the entourage she could have brought, but seeing her stay through the night, seeing her hold Mia's hand, whisper apologies, and hum gently when the little girl stirred, that broke through something deep inside him. At dawn, Mia woke. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, then softened when she saw Olivia slumped over the side of the bed, still holding her hand. "Liv? You came back?" Olivia swallowed. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere again." Jake's breath caught. Ranger nudged his leg softly, as if confirming the shift in the room. Olivia looked at Jake then, not with hesitation, but with resolve shaped by love and fear and newfound clarity. "I'm done running," she said. "Not from this, not from you." He searched her face, the way her dark hair framed her tired eyes, the way sincerity softened her features. Slowly he nodded, but apologies alone weren't enough. Olivia needed action. Over the next week, change happened like a quiet storm. She met with a seasoned attorney named Gerald Knox, a tall, silver-haired man in his late 50s, with a stoic jawline and a calm, methodical voice. Gerald had spent decades navigating corporate crisis and criminal defense. His calm manner could turn chaos into order. He reviewed the case, spoke to authorities, and ensured the thugs who harmed the garage and frightened Mia would face charges without loopholes. Olivia coordinated installation of high-grade cameras and motion-triggered lights around the garage. She spoke to the neighborhood council, leveraging her influence with surprising forcefulness. City officials suddenly paid attention to security in the harbor district. Patrols increased. She used her power, but not to impress Jake, to protect him. Yet the truest gesture came later. One morning, Olivia met her long-trusted COO, Michael Carter, at a nearby cafe. Michael was a man in his early 40s, with sandy hair, a tidy beard, and tired blue eyes that carried too many years of responsibility. He was dependable, fair, and had always placed the company's well-being above personal gain. "I'm stepping down," Olivia said simply. Michael blinked. "You're what?" "I'm promoting you to CEO. I'll stay on as an advisor, part-time. I need to build a life. Somewhere else." Michael stared at her for a long moment, then nodded with quiet understanding. "Go," he said, "and don't look back." And she didn't. Olivia rented an apartment 5 minutes from the garage. She bought Mia a new set of paints. She learned how to brew coffee exactly the way Jake liked it. She invested in expanding the garage into a veteran-run workshop, offering positions to former service members struggling to re-enter civilian life. Jake watched it all unfold with growing awe. This was no temporary presence. This was someone choosing them. A year later, under strings of warm lights draped across the rafters of the refurbished garage, Olivia stood in a simple ivory dress. Jake wore a clean shirt and a modest jacket, his beard neatly trimmed. Mia, now 8, twirled in a small blue dress, her laughter echoing like bells. Ranger lay beside her, wearing a tiny bow on his collar, though his watchful gaze never softened. Friends, neighbors, and former soldiers filled the space. No reporters, no flashing lights, only genuine faces, warm hands, and quiet blessings. As Jake took Olivia's hand, Ranger rose behind them, posture proud yet alert, the silent reminder that a Navy SEAL and his loyal dog still guarded this family from any darkness that dared approach. But tonight was not about danger. Tonight was about light, about the home they chose, about the family they built. In the quiet corners of life, miracles rarely arrive with thunder. More often, they come softly, in a mechanic's steady hands, in a frightened child's smile when she opens her eyes, in the loyalty of a dog who stands between danger and the innocent, and in a woman brave enough to return when love calls her home. Some say these moments are coincidence, but those who have lived long enough, those who have prayed through their darkest nights, know better. Grace shows up in ordinary places, sometimes in a small garage glowing with spring light, sometimes in the heart of a man who once walked through war, sometimes in the steps of a woman learning that success means nothing without someone to share it with. And sometimes, most beautifully, God sends protection before we even know we need it. A guardian in the shape of a Navy SEAL, a shield in the form of a loyal German shepherd, a reminder that even after seasons of loss, he is still writing stories of healing, courage, and second chances. As you finish this story, may you carry one truth into your own everyday life. Even on the days you feel unseen, unheard, or alone, God is moving pieces you cannot see. He is sending people you have not met. He is preparing miracles you have not imagined. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope still lives. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so these stories of faith, love, and protection can reach more homes, more hearts, more families. May God bless you, guard your steps, and bring quiet miracles into your week. Amen.